Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. I am very excited for today's video, but also really annoyed and angry because I literally waited until 11 a.m. Central Standard Time for like the Sephora rewards bazaar drops. And you can't get a gift card. You can't get a $100 gift card this time around. What a freaking surprise. I literally hate the Sephora rewards program. And truly I wish that I could just purchase everything that I wanted at Ulta. Second note before we get into today's video is don't get too close to the face. Please do not pay close attention to my face. I started using tretinoin. Oh my gosh. And like, boy, does my face just look rough. And also I'm working my way through my Sephora VIB like haul to like come back and test or come back and share my thoughts and opinions with you guys. So I have the ABH Beauty Balm on today. Yeah, it's not a day for my skin. It's not a skin day that I feel like I should have light coverage on. So I tried to do a little bit of a bolder lip to draw you away from that, but we're going to be talking about some palettes today that I would return if I could get my money back. I have 10 of them to share with you, and I like to film this video like once a year. I just feel like it's a really fun concept to consider. Like, what palettes do I not, well, some of these I feel like I might end up decluttering, but what palettes in a heartbeat, like if I could give these to you today and you would give me my money back for these palettes, I wouldn't even have to think twice about it. That's what we're talking about today. Again, I have 10 palettes to share with you, so if you're interested, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project planning content, palette themed content, or just chit-chatting about makeup, I'd love for you to consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. Six out of the 10 palettes that I'm talking to you about today are palettes that I purchased this year. I think we're at about 50 palettes purchased this year, so like inevitably there's going to be palettes in there that I don't love. And one thing that I've learned this year, and I think Odin's Eye really like brought this out in me, is that I don't need to be a collector. I really was considering purchasing the Odin's Eye holiday palettes, but I saw Annette from Annette's Makeup Corner review those, and I really appreciate just like how honest she is. She's done 2 collaborations with Odin's Eye, but she'll still call them out for saying there's something a little wonky happening with the matte formula. I feel the exact same way. I feel the exact same way, and it really just makes me not want to purchase Odin's Eye palettes until they figure that out, because I don't want to waste my money. I love everything else about the Odin's Eye brand. I still would say like I like Odin's Eye, but it's just, I don't know, something like they need to fix their matte formula, and then I'll buy all the palettes again, because I love their special formula. Like, I love their shimmer shades, but I have 40% of the palettes that I'm talking about today are Odin's Eye. So this entire collection I would trade in a heartbeat for my money back, and it makes me so sad to say that. But I have the Mighty Monster palette, which was in collaboration with Annette. I have the Earthwood palette, which was in collaboration with Fancy Face, and then I have the Spring Dragon palette, which was in collaboration with Judy. And I love the collaborators. I love the artwork. I really actually like the color stories, but there is just something I find so difficult about at least one matte in each of these palettes. For me, in the Mighty Monster palette, I really struggled with the purple. The red was really underwhelming. And then I also struggled with the dark green matte. I will say this is one that I don't necessarily know I will declutter at the end of this year, because I do really like all of the shimmer shades in this eyeshadow palette. I will also say though, even the browns I did not feel looked that great. So if I could get my like $32 back for this, like, yes, give me that $32, because I have a Sephora cart that's ready to go. Yes, I already have another Sephora cart ready to go. Next up is the Spring Dragon palette. This is in collaboration with Judy. Again, outer packaging or artwork, everything about the outer part of this is beautiful. I will say, of the 3 palettes, the color story of this one is probably the least appealing to me personally, just because I'm someone who likes something typically a little bit more dramatic with the eyes. I get like, we're not too dramatic today with the eyes, but typically I like something with a little bit more drama. There's only one look I created with this palette that I liked, and it was using the pastel green, and then the pastel green shimmer here. I don't know why my lights seem to really be washing this out, probably because they're pastels. But like this shade right here, Flora, already has like hard pan. These two blended so poorly together. This was probably the worst quality, at least in my experience, and just such a disappointment. So that is a second palette that I would, you know, I'd take the 32 back. Then we have the Earthwood palette with Fancy Face. Again, outer packaging is stunning, beautiful. I think this is a really fun color story, but my struggles with this one was the deep purple and the deep green. So this is another one I think I will actually likely end up decluttering. There's nothing, like the shimmers are really what I would keep the Odin's Eye palettes around for at this point in time. And for me, clearly I need to pass this along to my daughter because I feel like she was absolutely playing in this one. But for me, the shimmers in here are just not shades that I particularly care to have in my collection. So this is another one, money back. I'd take it in an instant. And then I also have the Jewels and Gem palette. I also, like Stone and Rock, I didn't include in this because I love that green shimmer shade, which if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, I believe these palettes were somewhere between the $30 to $40 range. And so really, like, ultimately it feels like that single shadow is costing me $30 to $40, because that's really the only reason I like that palette. Like, a lot of the mattes are awful in that. I feel the exact same way about the Stone and Rock palette. Sorry, the Jewels and Gem. The only shades that I like in this palette are High and Rhapsody. Like, these two shimmer shades are pretty, but like they're not super special to my collection. So I don't feel like I would need to keep this around for that reason. I will say I do like this shade Ecstasy, this like muted like purple, dusty purple. I think that's really pretty, but I really struggled with not only both of the blues, also the deep purple, and then also the shade Seventh Heaven. Like, to me, it's just unacceptable that their matte quality is like this. And I know it's not just me. I know I've heard many of you say that the matte quality in Odin's Eye just is not there. So this is what I actually am, it is on the chopping block. I am considering decluttering this. My next Armageddon episode should include Odin's Eye. And I used to think that Odin's Eye would be like, I would collect literally every palette and I would never declutter an Odin's Eye palette. But until they can improve their matte formula, it's a no for me. This one, like, I would, but it also would make me sad. Like, I'm not super mad to have this in my collection, because if you haven't heard, I have like a nostalgic thing with Scooby-Doo. Like, my sister and I, Scooby-Doo was our jam back in the day. But this is the Glamlite Scooby-Doo 2 palette. For me, this is not like top tier Glamlite quality. I also feel like this palette could have been like shrunk down. There's just a lot of like negative space, and I don't really care about the background of here. And even if we wanted like the background, I feel like we could have still like I feel like this could be a little bit smaller. It's, you know, I appreciate the large mirror, but I honestly would just prefer a more like palette. I love the shimmers in here. So this is not necessarily a palette that's on the chopping block, but if someone was like, I would give you, I can't remember what this costs, maybe 32 or 35, not over 40, but if someone was like to offer me $30 for this palette, I probably would take the $30. I also just feel like now I'm just so biased to Ensley Rain, Bella Beauté Bar, Glamminatrix. Like, I just am so biased to those formulas, and those are just so punchy and shifty. These are very metallic, but they're not like shifty like a Bella Beauté Bar or an Ensley Rain. So I think that's like a bit of something that holds me back. It's also a very colorful palette, and you know, I'm not playing around with bright, vibrant colors all that much. I will say I was also like a little bit let down with this red. It was just a little bit underwhelming and not super pigmented. So I'm still happy to have this in my collection, especially because I do, like, it would be kind of sad to get rid of these blues because I do love the blues, but I do believe if someone were to offer me $30 to $35 for this palette today, I would be like, okay, I'll take the money and run. By the way, if you can hear my washer in the background, I'm sorry. Also, my washer is like broken. Like, I need to have someone come fix it. It just keeps half washing, and then everything in there is like super wet, and then it says like sud on it. why I keep trying and not just have someone come fix it, I don't know. Okay, next up, speaking of Glamminatrix, I have the Glamminatrix Fairy Lights palette. I hope that I haven't talked about this palette in a previous video like this. I hope I'm not repeating myself. I think this is stunning and beautiful, but it is just a 6-pan all metallic palette. Like, it's very sparkly, but these shades really aren't shifty. They're just a high sparkle, high intensity metallic, like foiled shade. So this is fun to have as like a companion palette, but truthfully, I feel like if I'm wanting something kind of like with this aesthetic, I could reach into my Adept Minka palette, and I feel like Adept Minka is a little bit more of like a molten metallic. Like those are those really like creamy, almost wet shades, whereas this is just like a true powder. So I'm not mad to have this in my collection. I feel like this one, like this one's not on the chopping block, but I feel like this one was in the 30s as well. And truly, this is one of those ones, I feel like I was buying this because I like to purchase all of Glamminatrix palettes, but I feel like this is one of those ones where it's like, okay, I don't need everything. I might think I do, but I don't. And so again, if someone were to offer me $30 to $35 for this, I'd take the money and run. Sometimes I'm like, girl, like, let's just like, we don't have to like go to the extreme with like, I need every Nars palette, because I was so in love with the Nars Summer Solstice. I loved the Nars Summer Solstice, but one thing I've noticed about Nars palettes now is they're all really warm and rosy for the most part. Occasionally they'll do one that's not super warm and rosy. I also wanted to purchase this one because it had this checkered print, but it's kind of like a random checkered print. And while I love a checkered print, if this was a black and white checkered print, I'd like it a lot more. This, I believe, was $59, and this might get decluttered. I feel like I want to be really nitpicky during my next declutter, because while I like to buy, test, and try new palettes, I also don't like to feel like the majority of my palette collection is going unused, and I also don't like to feel like I have all these special palettes in my collection, but I really only have time to reach for them like 3 or 4 times a year. Like, I don't want to feel that way. So I don't know if I'll be able to do it. I don't know if I'll be strong enough, but I'm kind of hoping I can be really cutthroat during my end of year eyeshadow palette declutter. And with this palette, I like these 2 matte shades, but for the most part, I'd prefer something that's more of like a warm brown rather than like a warm pink leaning rosy finish. And this is just mostly pink leaning rosy finish shades. I do love this champagne lid topper, but I have something very similar to that in my Nars Summer Solstice palette. In fact, that was one of the shadows that really made me fall in love with Nars. And this just is kind of putting into perspective for me, you can love Nars, you can love their formula, you can rave about their formula. The formula in this is really good, but let's buy color stories that make sense to us. If this was a warm brown palette, I would keep it in a heartbeat. I just am not a huge fan of these like warm rosy tones personally, as I have a rosy eyeshadow look on today. But I will say today, well, it is kind of warm. Wow, oh my gosh, we are absolute crease city on the lids. I will say I didn't lay a glitter glue down today. Wow, okay, I'm actually embarrassed by my makeup. Do I have to work today? I sure do. Okay, 3 palettes left to talk about. I feel like we can talk about this next. This is the Glamlite Kiss eyeshadow palette. I purchased this when this launched this year, and I haven't reached for this once, and I was so excited about it. I think because I saw some of the blues and greens swatched and the metallics just looked so pretty, but I feel like this palette actually did not get the best reviews, and it's such a deep palette. Something about this just really intimidates me, and I just like really, like, I have not felt motivated at all to reach for this. I believe this launched in like March, so April, well, like March, April, May, June, July, August, wait, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, 9 months. I really wish that I didn't buy this. Would take my money back in a heartbeat for this one. I wish I had just discovered indie before Pat McGrath, because honestly, I would trade the majority of my Pat McGrath palettes for my money back, especially like, definitely I did get mine on a discount. I believe I got the majority of mine for 40% off actually, but that's still like $70 to $75 per palette. Dang! Then I could buy a whole Bella Beauté bar palette, buy pretty much a whole Ensley Rain palette, the majority of their palettes, and NC Rain and Bella Beauté Bar and Glamminatrix are just so much better than Pat McGrath in my opinion. Their matte formula is better. Their shifty shadows are so much shiftier, so much more special. I'm just kind of over mainstream. So the Pat McGrath Utopian palette, I think I've talked about the Pat McGrath Divine Rose in the past. So today I was like, I don't want to repeat myself, but the Utopian, again, rosy tones. The only shades I really like out of this, I will say I do like a warm pink metallic, so I do like this shade. I don't think it's anything special. I will say I actually like the majority of the metallics in here, but like I would immediately take my money back for like giving this up forever. And then the 10th and final palette that I would take my like $80 or $88 back for in a heartbeat is my Terra Moons Space Chemistry palette. Now, don't get me wrong, this palette is absolutely stunning. It is gorgeous. The mattes in here, I would be better suited to go dig in a pile of dirt, like dip my brush in a pile of dirt and blend that out on my lids. These are absolute trash in my opinion. Like the mattes in here are not good. The metallics just do not have like a long wear time on the lids. I would say I get a solid 6 hours and then they're really just kind of dull, like the, what is it, dull to the shine? No, that's not it at all. Dull to the sparkle. they're getting dull. They're not sparkly anymore. I will say I do love the shade Moonwater as like a lid topper, as well as Solarium. I think is such a fun shifty, like it shifts to a lot of different things, like a bronze to a green to a yellow gold, like that's beautiful. Atmosphere is also beautiful, as well as Light Particle. But like if I didn't have those shadows in my collection, I don't think it would be the end of the world to me. Like I definitely have a lot of other special shades that I would forget about these. Let's be real. They're nothing memorable. They really are nothing memorable. I would say Moonwater would be the most memorable, but still I feel like this shadow is like one of those shadows that's still really only getting a text back at like 10 p.m. if I'm really bored. Like there's so many other shadows that are coming before any of the shadows in here. I would give my money back, or I would trade this for my money back in a heartbeat. Anyway, you guys, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Those are the 10 eyeshadow palettes currently sitting in my collection that I would gladly hand over for my moolah back. I would love to know if you have any palettes like this sitting around in your palette collection. Let a girl know in the comments below. Other than that, thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting me and my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.